Tonight we are in the Boyd's community at the Brantywell Primary School, where we took the education to the community. We allowed the persons within the community to be able to ask questions about the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine. We were privileged enough to have Dr. Wilkerson here with us tonight, sharing the information and answering the questions. We had quite a number of questions from the persons who were here, and fortunately for us, we were able to get quite a number of persons who were able to sign up as well and are willing now to take the vaccine because they were able to have this session. This is the first in a number of community level sessions that we are going to have with persons, because we know it's important for persons to be able to ask the questions and be able to debunk some of the myths and the untruths that are out there about the COVID-19 vaccines. And so we are happy that we were able to be here at the Brantywell Primary School in Boyds. Next Wednesday we're going to be in two communities actually. We're going to be in the St. Johnson Community Center, but we're also going to have another team that's going to be at the McKnight Community Center doing the same thing, sharing the information and giving persons as much feedback as we can about the AstraZeneca COVID-19, because it's important for us to make sure that we reach that 70% herd immunity necessary for us to be able to get our lives back to as normal as possible. And so we're encouraging everyone to roll up, to roll out. Don't wait.
Is on.
A pleasant afternoon and welcome again to the National Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 weekly briefing for Wednesday, the 21st day of April 2021. I welcome all of you to this briefing. I recognize the Honorable Wendy Phipps, who is the co-chair of the Disaster Mitigation Council. Of course, we continue to update you on what is happening in St. Kitts and Nevis with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic is not over, and people continue to be infected. There are new variants that are more infectious and more lethal and more contagious. And we continue to manage as best as we could here in St. Kitts and Nevis the COVID-19 pandemic. There is a lot of fake news going around. The agenda seems to be ramped up in terms of anti-vaxxers, people who are against taking the vaccine. One of the most recent pieces of fake news put out by anti-vaxxers, people against the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, is something coming out of, or purportedly coming from, the International Criminal Court, which tried to implicate the Office of the Prime Minister in St. Kitts and Nevis, saying that some order was received to desist and resist, or some kind of baloney, something like that. And the Prime Minister did respond, and this is what he said. We have no matter before the ICC, which is International Criminal Court, Neither are we a party to any matter. Therefore, no judgment or order can be given with regard to St. Kitts and Nevis. The bona fides of the purported ICC document currently in circulation on social media has yet to be confirmed. The Office of the Prime Minister is not in receipt of or has officially been made aware of any document related to this matter. Further, the World Health Organization, the relevant international body, which oversees all health-related matters in the United Nations, has approved the use and administering of the AstraZeneca vaccine since early 2021. It must be highlighted that the document in circulation speaks to a judgment or order in November 2020, at a time when no country in the hemisphere was engaged in any COVID-19 vaccination program. This significantly diminishes the credibility of the purported document. I would want to encourage all to check and verify before accepting as fact these types of information being peddled in this era of fake news. Of course, we want to have media houses and organizations that disseminate information to the public that is credible. In this age of social media, there's a lot placed on social media that is meant to mislead, to misinform, and so on. But before media houses can publish news, information, credible media houses, there should first do their checks. The reliability and the validity of information is extremely important. We continue to say from this platform that we want media houses, of course, to partner with us in this fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, but that people must check official sources, verify information, put accurate information out there. I would like to invite Superintendent Cromwell Henry to address us firstly. He is a member of the National COVID-19 Task Force. Superintendent.
Good afternoon, all, and a pleasant good afternoon to all listening to this broadcast via whatever means. Today, I will use my time to remind our citizens and residents that COVID-19 remains a health threat to the Federation. We continue to see complacency setting in and persons getting a false sense of health security. We see this behavior frequently at parties, bars, and other similar social activities. These type of events, by their very nature, facilitate easy spread of the virus, should someone who is infected be present. Persons in these environments do not wear masks, they do not observe physical distancing, they do not practice good hand hygiene. Instead, they interact dangerously close with other persons who are not from their circle. Somehow persons are of the notion that everyone who enters the country are in quarantine, so it is okay to socialize and ignore the protocols. While we do our best to ensure that persons who should be in quarantine are in fact in quarantine, we've had instances in the past, and some of these instances were well publicized, where persons whom we consider high risk found themselves socializing at crowded events. We continue to do our best to keep the country safe. However, we need you to be responsible by doing your part to help us keep us all safe. All that we are asking is that you follow the basic protocols that are described in the COVID-19 regulations, and they have kept us safe this far. Wear a mask when in public, avoid crowds and crowded events, practice good hand hygiene, and maintain physical distance of 6 feet from other persons. We are now in the vaccination phase of our journey to a full opening or near normalcy. We encourage all to take advantage of this opportunity to be vaccinated and do your part to ensure that we have a safe and prosperous country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. You know, I was speaking to somebody and trying to encourage them to take the vaccine. And they said to me, I don't want to hear anything about any vaccine. The vaccine is killing people. And I said to the person, well, there must be some confusion, because it's not the vaccine that is killing people, it's the COVID-19 virus that is killing people. Not the vaccine. The COVID-19 virus has killed over 3 million people. That was the grim milestone that was reached at the beginning of this week. 3 million people dead. Not over 10 years, in 1 year. 3 million people dead. It's not the vaccine, it is the COVID-19 virus. Let us not get it twisted. I now invite the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, to present us with the Health Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 report. Health emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and a warm good afternoon to everyone. It's my duty, as per usual, to share with you the NEOC situation report for today, April the 21st. To date, the Federation would have reported 44 cases of COVID-19, and all 44 cases have fully recovered. We are not monitoring any active cases at this time. Between last January to present, health professionals globally have been following up this pandemic. Despite the massive COVID-19 vaccine rollout globally, the pandemic continues. To date, 142.2 million persons have been confirmed with COVID-19, and as Mr. Williams just noted, over 3.03 million persons have died from this disease. And as I said earlier, globally, there has been a rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination process, and over 843.2 million doses of the various vaccine candidates have been administered to individuals. 31.8 million of the confirmed cases were reported by the United States alone, and over 568,000 deaths were reported by the USA. The pandemic continues in the Caribbean region, so we are not spared. Amongst the CARICOM member states, 152,476 confirmed cases were reported, and over 2,500 deaths have been recorded amongst the CARICOM member states. Now, amongst the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, meaning the 9 OECS territories, we have a total of 11,663 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and to date 156 deaths have been reported from the CARICOM, from the OECS member states alone. Now, similarly, to St. Kitts and Nevis, well, as you are aware, in St. Kitts and Nevis, we've rolled out our COVID-19 vaccination program, and so too the other OECS territories. And so you can look at the status of the vaccine rollout in Barbados, for example. They would have administered over 66,000 doses. They would have provided coverage to about 24% of their population with at least the first dose of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. Similarly, Antigua continues their vaccine rollout. They've covered about 30% of their population with the first dose. Dominica has covered about 25% of its population with at least the first dose. Montserrat, about 30.8% of the population with the first dose. Now, in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, as at this afternoon, we would have administered 11,848 doses of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine to our people, and in other words, we would have covered 35.86% of the target population with at least with the first dose of this vaccine. Now, in terms of breakdown, we would have administered 8,935 doses in St. Kitts, 2,913 doses in Nevis, and these figures are as at this afternoon, after closure of the health centers. We continue our active surveillance program, whereby we are monitoring everyone who would present into our emergency room with signs and symptoms or COVID-like signs and symptoms. They are all tested. We also continue testing all inbound passengers coming in from hotspots. And so to date, we would have tested well over 13,000 persons with a positivity rate of only about 0.3%. Next slide. We continue offering the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine to our people. I just want us to be reminded that once you are fully vaccinated, and full vaccination means you would have received the 2 doses of this vaccine, and we are administering the doses 10 weeks apart. WHO advises us that if you administer these 2 doses 8 to 12 weeks apart, the individual who is fully vaccinated can enjoy 83% risk reduction in contracting COVID-19. We are offering it to adults over 18, and please note that this vaccine provides good protection against the SARS-CoV-2 variant identified in the United Kingdom, and also based on the latest science coming out, this vaccine also provides you some protection against the SARS-CoV-2 variant identified in South Africa and Brazil. These are the common post-vaccine symptoms as described by our people, and these are the symptoms that have been voiced by those who would have received the vaccine locally. Tenderness at the injection site, mild fever relieved by paracetamol or acetaminophen, just general malaise, fatigue, tiredness, generalized body aches and pains, and mild headache. Now, to date, the Federation would have received a total of 41,600 doses. So initially we received 20,000, and then on April 7th we received an additional 21,600 doses. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the shelf life for these vaccines is quite short. And so we have to use up all these vaccines by the end of June this year. So persons are saying, I'm going to wait. Please note that the shelf life of the vaccines quite short. They must be utilized on or before the end of June this year. Again, as a federation, our aim is to attain the herd immunity threshold. Now, the science tells us that this is anywhere between 70 to 90% of our population, but in our situation, based on our last census, the adults in St. Kitts comprise about a little over 70% of our population, and so our aim is to vaccinate 70% of our population, the adults in our population. And based on the rate at which we are vaccinating, we hope to achieve this goal by about September of this year. And so we are hoping that most of the adults would come on board in terms of accepting this vaccine. Protect yourself against COVID-19, choose to vaccinate, because in so doing you will be protecting yourself, because as I said before, once you are fully vaccinated, you would have an 83% risk reduction in picking up the virus. Very, very small risk. So in other words, let's put it in ordinary terms. If perchance we have clusters of cases of COVID-19, if we go into community transmission and the virus is spreading, once you are fully vaccinated, the risk of your contracting the disease is very slim. And if perchance you do, it prevents you from becoming very ill, it prevents death. Now, just some new information coming out of the New York Times about 2-3 days ago. So researchers have reported on a new study, and they were looking at air travel. And what they found is that if the airlines were to keep the middle seats vacant during flight, this could reduce the air passengers' exposure to COVID-19 by as much as 23 to 57%. And so I'm really hoping that the airlines take this new scientific bit of information on board. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our COVID-19 vaccine rollout, as I said before, we are just at about 36% in terms of coverage with respect to the first dose, so we still have some distance to go, and so we need to be reminded of the essential public health measures that have proven to be successful, whereby you wear your face mask when you're in public spaces, maintain hand hygiene, maintain that safe distance from others when you are out attending a function or in the public domain, and try to avoid crowds still. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laws. I now invite the chair of the National COVID-19 Task Force and National Disaster Coordinator, Mr. Abdias Samuel, to address us.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and a pleasant good afternoon to all who are tuned in by whatever means. This afternoon, I want to start my presentation briefing you on the present status of the La Soufrière volcano eruption in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I'm going to focus on the two-phase approach that St. Kitts and Nevis is using to respond to this event in assistance to the people and government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The status of the volcano remains at alert level red, meaning that there could be volcanic eruption without any notice or without any sort of warning. We have seen the various explosions that have occurred with the pyroclastic flow that has affected many villages in the northern part of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Kitts and Nevis has continued with their approach in terms of assistance in that of relief supplies, financial contributions, and supporting our regional mechanism, as well as the human resource support in that of the security forces that are on standby to be deployed shortly. For the benefit of all, the there are 88 shelters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, with approximately 6,208 occupants in those 88 shelters. Some 6,567 persons are staying in private shelters, meaning they're either staying with friends or family in their private homes, and a total of 13,303 persons are presently displaced as a result of this eruption. We want to express solidarity with the NEOC in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who are operating 24 hours a day around the clock. And we send our prayers to our colleagues at the NEOC in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So what has St. Kitts has done so far? In terms of relief supplies, we have shipped drinking water, non-perishable food items, cleaning items, buckets, face masks, baby items, pet food, and personal hygiene kits. So we have shipped 2 40-foot containers and 3 20-foot containers with the estimated value of 280,000 EC dollars worth of relief supplies. And I'm also pleased to advise that the St. Kitts Nevis Displaced Persons Committee that was approved by the federal cabinet has already met 2 times to develop and put in place the necessary plans as we prepare to receive displaced persons from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. To date, out of the 350 plus persons that have showed interest in being moved to other countries, or migrating to other countries rather, 7 have indicated interest in coming to St. Kitts and Nevis. So in this regard, we are looking at the pre-screening criteria, we are looking at the health and travel protocols that will be enforced, and also the compliance with the COVID-19 protocols that would be required. A critical area that we're also looking at is the medium to long-term planning in terms of sheltering. So it is important that persons who are desirous of sponsoring or supporting persons who are displaced from the impacted area in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that they can call NEMO or contact Ms. Janelle Lewis, Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Social and Community Development, and indicate your interest. Your information will be taken, and then you will be contacted. We have been also receiving requests from family members of persons living in St. Vincent who are desirous of bringing their family here to St. Kitts and Nevis. We are asking you to register your interest with NEMO or the Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Social and Community Development. These are the agencies or ministries that will be leading this coordination. Ladies and gentlemen, today, approximately 3:43 p.m., most of you would have felt a tremor or earthquake, and the UV Seismic Research Center in Trinidad and Tobago would have notified that this would have occurred approximately 63 kilometers northwest of St. Kitts and Nevis, 66 kilometers northeast of St. Kitts and Nevis, at a depth of 10 kilometers with a magnitude of 4.4. So therefore, yes, you would have felt it, and if you did, please visit the NEMO Facebook page and let us know if you felt this earthquake. We are now heading into the hurricane season. It is important for you to start to prepare. Preparedness means if you have a hurricane plan, please continue to review it. If you don't have one, please prepare a plan. Please plan for the worst case scenario. Now, one of the things that we do for the hurricane season for sheltering is we first encourage the body system meaning being our brothers and sisters' keepers. In the context of COVID-19, you would understand that sheltering, if we are impacted by a tropical cyclonic system, then it would require that you either leave your home if it's badly damaged and go into a government-designated shelter, or you may have to shelter with someone else. And I want to share this story with you for a particular reason. Having discussions with our colleagues in the caucuses, that's the National Disaster Directors Caucuses for the 19 CDMA states, this discussion was held. And what was revealed was that even though the executive director of CDMA would have indicated that since 2019, the persons in St. Vincent and the Grenadines were preparing for the explosion of the volcano, it took the explosion of the volcano and a second explosion of the volcano for persons to evacuate from the red zone. What does that mean in the context of what I want to explain to you? Do not wait until we have a major explosion in St. Kitts and Nevis to find yourself not vaccinated or unvaccinated. Do your best. Vaccinate. We have the potential of a duplicity in terms of hazard impact to St. Kitts and Nevis, meaning we could be facing the COVID-19 pandemic as well as a major hurricane that can impact us and challenge us, and that's when we're going to see people wanting to take the vaccine because they want to be protected. Please do your best. Use the opportunity now. Go and vaccinate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. We now come to the question and answer segment, and my questions today are from Vaughan Radio in Nevis. The first question, a press release issued by the St. Kitts Biomedical Research Foundation stated that they conducted research on Canadian pharmaceutical company Entos COVID-19 vaccine candidate COVID-Genix VAX 001. According to the release, this was done before clinical trials, including 72 health volunteers. Are these trials being conducted in St. Kitts and Nevis or in Canada?
What I can say is we are not aware of any human clinical trials that have been authorized through the Ministry of Health in St. Kitts and Nevis, and if we get any further information, we will give it to you. I'm aware of the fact that there were animal trials, but I'm not aware of any human clinical trials being carried out in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. I also saw the press release, and it did not indicate that it was human trial. It indicated that, of course, you know what the Biomedical Research Foundation does at Lower Boreal, that they use primates, monkeys, for research. That is what that foundation is all about. The second question, in some countries, is also from Vaughan Radio. In some countries, as well as some islands in the region, such as Saba, their herd immunity target threshold is 80%. But here in St. Kitts and Nevis, our target is 70%. Will it remain at 70, or will this figure change eventually?
Okay, we have said before that the herd immunity threshold for COVID-19 ranges anywhere from 70 to 90% based on the calculations done using the R value. Now, of our population, approximately 30% are below the age of 18 and cannot take the vaccine, which means that we are only left with 70% of the population, which is the persons over the age of 18. And that's why we are looking for 70% or 100% of the persons over the age of 18. So until there is a vaccine that comes out for persons that's available to us that can be given to persons under the age of 18, we cannot increase our threshold.
Is there any specific reason why 70%? Why not 60? Why not 65, for example?
Yes. When these thresholds are being calculated by the expert, they use a formula that involves the R factor, which is the number of persons that each person can infect. And if the virus was allowed to just run rampant in terms of community spread, one person will infect at least 2.8 persons. And using that formula and extrapolating it, they came to the figure that for COVID-19, you would need to have 70 to 90% of the population immunized for you to arrest the spread. And so that's how it's figured out.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. This one has to do with the National Disaster Coordinator. Will there be another donation drive to assist St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And if so, will this be a weekly activity?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Williams. I don't think St. Nevis could afford a weekly activity. Tropical Shipping, in collaboration with CDMO, has given a number of, they call them TUs, or number of tonnage, in which the 19 member states, from Belize, Bahamas, Jamaica, all the way down to Suriname, can utilize to send relief supplies to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I think St. Kitts already, with approximately 5 containers that we have sent, basically have taken up all of our TUs. However, we have asked CDMO for one more container to be utilized, as we have some more supplies that persons have still brought. And due to the demand on the shelters, as more persons are going to the shelters, we are going to require to assist our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for a long term. This is not a short-term impact, it's a long-term impact, so they're going to need the assistance as much as possible. And also bear this in mind, that we are going to be receiving persons who are going to come from St. Vincent, and it's going to need a all of society or all hands on deck approach to this potential receptance of displaced persons. So I would say to citizens, continue to support the drive. We are going to continue with the drive, because this drive also should assist us in the event that we are impacted by any hurricane. Our supply chains can be disrupted, and we already see the challenges that many countries are having in terms of having being able to provide external assistance. So the drive will continue. Hope it will not be weekly. It will depend on the number of supplies that we gather to send to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. I now invite Dr. Wilkinson to make a comment.
That's why I just thought it was important for me to come back up here and to make an appeal again, the vaccination rollout and the vaccination program. And what I want to address, sometimes I hear persons saying they want to wait, they're going to wait for a better vaccine, that it is one's right to refuse the vaccine. And I keep saying that this pandemic is like a fire that is blazing, and we need to put it out. And the only way we can put it out is with the vaccine. There are little embers that can fly off and start a new fire, and we need to make sure that we eradicate everything. This morning when I was on WinFM, I made an analogy, and I want to bring this analogy here again, because I was explaining why it is important for persons to take the vaccine that is available, and the fact that we say that the benefits outweigh the risk. And I use the analogy, if you were caught on the second floor of a building that was burning, the fire was burning on the bottom floor and the stairs, and I showed up with a ladder and put it at the window and asked you to come out, because by coming down, you can prevent yourself, one, from getting severely burned, and two, from dying in the fire, which is the same thing by taking the vaccine and COVID-19. And if you were there as a 35-year-old man with your 35-year-old uncle and a child and your grandmother, and you had to come down the step, come down the ladder, we know people fall off ladders all the time. And so there's a risk of falling off the ladder. But if you come down carefully, you will not fall. If I also told you that you needed to do the right thing and take the child who cannot climb down the ladder and climb down the ladder with the child to save yourself and the child, and also the other middle-aged person who was there needed to come down the ladder with the elderly person to protect them, and all the persons would be saved. And there was somebody else saying, oh, it is your right whether or not you can choose to come down the ladder or not. Yes, it is your right, but that person who is telling you it is your right to choose, they don't have your interest at heart, because if you chose not to come down the ladder and exercise your right and stayed on that second floor, you and your family will burn to death. And so the same thing with the vaccine. Yes, it might be your right to say yes or no, but we know that the vaccine can protect you from getting COVID-19. We know that the vaccine can protect you from getting severely ill. We know that the vaccine can save your life. This is the vaccine that we have here now. We do not have Pfizer, we do not have Moderna, and so there's no point in you speaking about those when the ladder we have to get you out of the burning building is the AstraZeneca. So I'm asking everyone to exercise common sense, really, and step forward and take the vaccine. And anyone who is telling you you should not take the vaccine, they cannot have your interests at heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. I have one more question. Is it safe for a pregnant woman or a mother who is breastfeeding to take the vaccine?
If you were to look at the World Health Organization site and even the information from AstraZeneca, they will tell you that if there is a pregnant woman who is at risk, she can take the vaccine, and or if she's breastfeeding, she also can take the vaccine. However, because sufficient studies were not done in the pregnant and the lactating female, we here in St. Kitts and Nevis have decided that we would not be administering the vaccine to persons who are pregnant or who are lactating. And that's why we're asking the non-pregnant, non-lactating persons who are eligible to take the vaccine so that they can protect those persons who cannot take the vaccine. So by you going forward and getting vaccinated, you'll be protecting the pregnant mother and her child. You'll be protecting the lactating mother and her child.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wilkinson. That brings us to our Attorney General and chair of the Disaster Mitigation Council would like to address us. Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Lesroy, and good afternoon to all our viewers and listeners here in St. Kitts and abroad, St. Kitts and Nevis and abroad. Chairman Lesroy Williams, the Director General of the SKNIS, the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, began today's presentation by indicating that fake news, disinformation, was being circulated by those who want to discourage the taking of the vaccine. In particular, Lesroy spoke about a blog circulating on social media purporting to have come from the International Tribunal, in which St. Kitts and Nevis has had an order issued to cease and desist in our COVID response, cease and desist the rollout of our vaccination program. Similar orders would have been issued by the same bloggers to Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Grenada, and others of our neighbors in the region. I want to say categorically that this entire episode is false, has no basis in law, and is null, void, and of no effect on any of our states. We can say categorically that we believe this to be nonsense. The Prime Minister's office would have issued a statement to indicate that his office has not received any such order, any such legal documents at all, and would have gone further to indicate that St. Kitts and Nevis is not involved in any matter before the International Criminal Court. It is most unfortunate that a local media house that I know of and local journalists should have accepted this blog as credible and disseminated stories on it without doing the proper research to debunk the blog. So I want to briefly refer to the blog and put as much out to the general public. If one was to go to a webpage called xopolitics.blogs.com, you'd see the origination of this blog. And you would note that at the top of this blog would be headed International Criminal Code, not International Criminal Court. The blog has no relationship whatsoever to the International Criminal Court that is based in The Hague in the Netherlands, as would have been put out and disseminated by the local journalist. If one was to see this and download it, it has in it such things as judgment of the tribunal in the matter of genocidal technologies, pandemic on the indictment, genocide and crimes against humanity by 5G pandemic perpetrators. I scroll down, then you have a big logo called International Tribunal. Nothing about International Criminal Court. And then we can scroll down further. And it says here, media advisories, tribunal orders cease and desist genocidal COVID vaccinations. And if one was to go into that you can read such. This comes from another blog that says peaceinspace.org, and quite cleverly starts ICC Media Update Monday, April 19th, 2021. And I read, the Natural and Common Law Tribunal for Public Health and Justice at www.peaceinspace.org, together with the International Association to Confront Coronavirus and Global Violations officials, IACCO, at https://www.iacco.fr, and the Canadian Institute for International Law Expertise at cifile.org, jointly decided on Saturday, April 17th, 2021, to file a communication with the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, at The Hague. Given the ICC prosecutor sufficient grounds to open an investigation into the 2020-2021 pandemic as a violation of Articles 5, 6, 7, and 8, and other articles of the International Criminal Court Statute, which 123 state parties have ratified. The peaceinspace.org tribunal, the IACCO.fr, and CIFILE.org will issue details of this initiative once a communication has been filed with the International Criminal Court prosecutor. Until then, no further details can be released. Thank you. This is what is the basis of the blog that has circulated over the last couple of days and has caused some consternation in our country. Again, I repeat, the entire episode is unfortunate. It is most unfortunate that our local media houses should have attempted to disseminate this without doing proper investigation and research into it. We'd like to assure our citizens and residents that there is no such order against the state, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, that this is false, it's null, void, and of no effect, and therefore should not at all interfere with the ordinary business of St. Kitts and Nevis. We believe in the rule of law, the administration of justice in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we are comfortable to know that we have violated no such international law, or local law for that matter. We would want to continue to urge our citizens to take the vaccination. It is for your protection. It is your best protection. And so we do urge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Attorney General and Chair of the Disaster Mitigation Council, for further expanding on what I began by saying in terms of the fake news. And we thank him very much for that very detailed explanation. We can't believe everything because it's on the social media or in a book. we are sensible people. We have a very high, or it is said we have a very high literacy rate. Literacy rate, I think it's in the 90s. We have to be critical thinkers. Today, Joseph Biden, the President of the United States of America, announced that he has reached his target when he said of, I think it's 200 million doses or something to that effect. They are reaching their targets. Europe, other countries, people are desperate to take the vaccine. And we are believing a lot of nonsense that is emanating from these very same countries, people who are anti-vaccine. We are smarter than that. We are smarter people than that. We are more educated people than that. So thank you very much, Attorney General. I have two announcements to make. One has to do with Dr. Wilkinson, who recently celebrated his birthday. I think his birthday was yesterday. Yesterday was his birthday, and we congratulate him. You know, it is by no coincidence that a number of us here have been born in April. Dr. You're 35?
I celebrated 35.
You celebrated 35. So it's Dr. Wilkinson, Dr. Laws, yours truly, Superintendent Henry. We are all born in April. And it is by no coincidence. So. And the other thing is, for those wishing to send personal items to anyone in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there's a boat called Promised Kept that goes to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Persons can contact Miss Janice Brooks for further details, and her number is 662-5324. 662-5324. And an additional announcement is that Rebecca's Catering sent a birthday cake for Dr. Wilkinson. So we are going to have a little celebration after. Thank you very much to all of you for tuning in for today's briefing, COVID-19 briefing. We thank you very much for joining us. We thank Superintendent Henry, Dr. Laws, Dr. Wilkinson, Mrs. Christmas Jacobs, ZIZ, all the media houses, Vesta, of course, for transporting the cake and all the other things that she does. And also, I understand there's champagne too. And I also thank our Attorney General and the Honorable Wendy Phipps. They're always very supportive of what we are doing here. Chair of the Disaster Mitigation Council, the Honorable Vincent Byron, and co-chair of the Disaster Mitigation Council, the Honorable Wendy Phipps. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Next week we will be back with another COVID-19 briefing. Until then, take care and do not be afraid to get vaccinated. I am Les Roy Williams.